At Christmas, my parents gave gifts to everyone, except my children, showing they don't welcome them. Said Mom. We calmly went, and I stopped paying for their repairs after a week. It was the usual Christmas routine. My parents invited the whole family over to their house like they did every year. I wasn't particularly excited about it, but with family, sometimes you just go through the motions. My wife Jenna and I packed up the kids, Emma and Ryan, and made the drive over. Everyone was there. My older sister Amanda and her kids, a bunch of cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole crew. At first everything seemed normal. Christmas music was playing, kids were running around, and everyone was catching up. My parents had gone all out with the decorations. The tree sparkled with lights and ornaments from our childhood. For a while it felt like we were part of something good, a real family moment. Then came the gift exchange. The kids were excited, especially Emma. She's 6, so she still believes in all that magic. I saw her eyes light up every time a cousin ripped through the wrapping paper. The gifts kept coming. One after another. Amanda's kids got brand new tablets, the cousins' kids got bikes, games, and drones. One of my uncles even got a watch. Then silence. Jenna and I waited, but nothing came for our kids. Emma and Ryan just sat there confused. Emma looked around, then up at me, her smile fading. Ryan kept asking, "Where are we?" It hit me like a punch in the gut. I turned to my mom. "Did you forget the kids' presents or something?" I tried to keep my tone light. My mom crossed her arms and gave me that cold look. "We didn't forget," she said. "We didn't get them anything. We didn't congratulate them." I blinked, thinking I had misheard. "Excuse me. What do you mean? You're not congratulating them?" She didn't blink. "They're just like you. Ungrateful and entitled." Emma's face fell and tears welled up in her eyes. Jenna immediately hugged her and whispered something to calm her. Ryan looked like he was about to cry as well, but he held back, trying to be brave for his big sister all around us. The room fell into an awkward, heavy silence. No one spoke. No one stood up for us. Amanda looked away, pretending not to notice. My cousins exchanged glances but said nothing. It was as if everyone had expected this. As if it was just another family drama they didn't want to get involved in. Janice squeezed my arm and whispered, "Steve, let's just go. It's not worth it." For a moment I wanted to explode, but I forced myself to stay calm. I looked directly at my mother and said, We bundled up the kids, grabbed our coats, and walked out the door. I slammed it behind me and the sound echoed through the neighborhood. I couldn't think straight on the drive home. My parents had done a lot of hurtful things over the years, but this was next level. It wasn't just me anymore. They were hurting my children. Emma was still sniffing in the back seat, asking, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me? How do you even answer that?" I replayed the last few months in my head. There had been tension. They had wanted me to buy them a new house because their current one apparently wasn't good enough anymore. I told them no, but offered to pay for major renovations. Instead, I had workers redo the entire second floor. New plumbing, electrical walls, everything. It had already cost me $21,000 and it wasn't even finished. But it wasn't enough for them. It never was. I gripped the steering wheel. They wanted to pretend I was the problem. Fine. They could make their own repairs now. Come New Year's, I'd cancel everything. This wasn't over. The morning after the Christmas party, I woke up still seething. Jenna and the kids were asleep, but I couldn't rest. Kept hearing Emma's voice. Why don't they love me? Crushed me. I had to do something. I grabbed my cell phone and called Frank, the contractor handling my parents' renovation. "Hey Frank, I'm canceling the project," I said. "Tell your crew they'll be done after New Year's." There was a pause. "Are you sure about that? Parents won't be happy?" "Let them call me," I replied. After that I finally felt some control over the situation, but it didn't last long. Around noon the calls started coming in. Amanda was first, but I let her go to voicemail. Then my dad, same thing. Finally my mom's name came up and I relented. "You're canceling the renovation," she demanded, skipping all the formalities. "You heard me?" I said, "I'm done." She launched into a tirade about how irresponsible and selfish. We have the entire second floor torn up. How can you just leave us hanging like this?" I was unfazed. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you treated my kids like garbage. You crossed the line and I'm not going to bend over backward for you anymore. Stop being so dramatic." She snapped, "Your children need to learn that they will not be rewarded for bad behavior. Just like you." I laughed bitterly. "Right? Teaching them a lesson by humiliating them on Christmas. Real, classy. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up in the evening. Amanda showed up at the house, which took me by surprise. I opened the door and saw that she wasn't there for a friendly visit. "You can't just leave her like that, Steve," she said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. I sighed. "Here we go. Let me guess. You're here to tell me to listen to them, right?" "I'm here because they're freaking out. The second floor is uninhabitable and they don't know what to do." "Not my problem," I said. "You saw what they did to Emma and Ryan. They crossed the line." Amanda hesitated for a moment. "Look, I know it was harsh, but that's just Mom." She doesn't mean half the things she says. Not good enough, I shot back. They're your parents too, Amanda. But you are the golden child. They helped you through your divorce, but all I get is demands and insults. I've been paying for these renovations over 20 grand already, and they still act like I owe them everything. Amanda sighed. They're set in their ways. Steve, you have to be the bigger person. I'm done being the bigger person, I said firmly. We stared at each other in silence. Finally, she gave up, shook her head and left. A few days later, I got a surprise from another corner of the family. Chris, one of my cousins, called me out of the blue. Hey man, I heard about what happened. He said, I just wanted to check in. That's pretty messed up, what they did to your kids. I didn't expect him to take my side. It was brutal. I'm done with them, honestly. I don't blame you. They've been pulling this crap for years. My mom told me that your parents think you owe them for everything they did for you when you were younger. But man, you've already paid that debt. And then some. It felt good to hear someone else say that over the next few days, 4 cousins came forward with similar sentiments. Apparently my parents had been gossiping about me for a while, but not everyone was buying their version of the story. Then Amanda stirred things up again. This time she brought in some of our aunts and uncles and turned it into a full-blown family debate. Half the family thought I was right to stand my ground, while others, especially those closer to my parents, argued that I was being vindictive. The pressure was mounting, but I wasn't about to back down. The lines were being drawn. It didn't take long for my parents to escalate things. A few days after Amanda's visit, my dad called me for a moment. I thought he was calling to apologize. Maybe there was a shred of decency left in him, but I was wrong. We need to talk, he said, his voice cold, almost rehearsed about what I asked, already knowing where this was going, the renovations. You can't just leave us like this. We need you to get things back on track. I sighed. I already told Mom, I'm done. You can hire someone else. Dad didn't take the bait. He remained eerily calm. If you go through with this, there will be consequences, Steve, consequences. I repeated in disbelief. He said, you think you can disrespect your family like this without consequences? Fine. If you're not going to take responsibility, we're not going to be a part of your life. Pause, then added. And that includes Emma and Ryan. For a few seconds I was speechless. Steve's parents crossed the line by threatening to disown his kids over the renovation dispute. His father coldly told him they were rewriting the will, cutting him and his children out in response. Steve took action. He emptied the joint account he had set up to help them, taking back his money and closing it. The fallout was immediate. His mother called in a panic, realizing they had no funds to finish the renovations. Steve refused to help, reminding her they had wanted him out of their lives. Amanda pleaded with him, but he stood firm, pointing out their parents' cruelty toward his children. Word spread through the family. Many cousins sided with Steve, disgusted by his parents' behavior. However, older relatives, especially those dependent on his parents, turned against him. Aunt Carol accused him of tearing the family apart, but Steve saw the hypocrisy. No one had cared about his kids on Christmas that evening. His father left a venomous voicemail calling him selfish and ungrateful, vowing that Steve would regret his actions. But Steve wasn't backing down. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. It was a war. Steve ignored his father's angry voicemail, knowing things would escalate. The next day, Jenna received messages from Amanda and other relatives who sided with his parents. His father spread a twisted version of the story, claiming Steve abandoned them and stole family funds, conveniently leaving out how they humiliated his kids and threatened to disown them. Despite the smear campaign, Steve's cousins continued to support him. Chris even suggested pitching in for the renovations, not for Steve's parents but to end their ability to guilt-trip him. Steve was shocked but grateful. Steve's parents, overwhelmed and desperate, begged for his help, but he knew giving in would only enable their toxic behavior with legal rights over shared finances. He revoked their access, cut off support, and ensured they faced the consequences. Word spread. Most of the family, including Amanda, saw their parents' true nature. When they showed up at his house pleading for forgiveness, Steve refused, realizing they weren't sorry for their actions, only for losing control. The family divide became final. Steve focused on Jenna and their kids, free from manipulation. For the first time he felt at peace. As Chris said, sometimes cutting people off is the only way to protect your peace. Steve had won.